I'm from the Department of Computer Engineering, and I'm very happy to share my experiences with rubrics on Canvas. So let me start sharing my screen and show you in my practice course a little bit of how I have previously done rubrics and how I'm doing rubrics currently with specifications grading. So typically when I start an assignment and I start writing the assignment, I frame the rubrics right from that point. So as I set the questions, I start writing down the expectations that I want the students to answer a particular question and what part of it, to what detail I want them to answer. That comes right from the time I start setting the quiz or an assignment or anything. So because of that, when I start writing the assignment, I also start writing a rubric, at least in paper. To create a rubric on Canvas, it's quite simple. Let me start by just creating a new assignment and showing you how to create a rubric while you create the assignment. So if I create a new assignment, let me call it sandbox assignment. You can set all the options for the assignment, and this is like how setting a standard assignment. Right now I can just do this. So once the assignment is set, you can add a rubric by doing a plus rubric in the bottom of the assignment. And for the rubric, you can give a title so that you can find it. This is, let's say, trial rubric, right? And so once you have this set of criteria and the points that you want to assign for each criteria, all you have to do is describe the criteria. This is criterion 1, and I can set full marks, no marks, partial credit or something, partially correct, and so on. That can depend on the assignment. The good thing is once you create one criterion, you can add the other one by duplicating the previous one. Just name it something else and change the criterion, and that should help. You can use this rubric for grading, or you can just use it as a guideline for the students to know what they need to complete in order to get the score. If you don't use the rubric for grading, the only difference is it doesn't appear in the speed grader when you have to grade the assignments on Canvas. So let me show you what happens. I mean, if I don't use the rubric for assignment grading, then I'll show you what it looks like when we use it for grading. So that's the basics of setting up a rubric. You can create the rubric. This is published, and I should probably go into student view to be able to submit something and then look at it in the speed grader. Okay, so yeah, this did appear. I can view the rubric, I can use it to grade, but yeah, I can use this and I can save it. And it does appear over here in the rubric, but the final grade itself, it doesn't come by itself. In fact, I can try giving the total score for this assessment and seeing if it changes, and that won't change because I didn't use the rubric to affect the final grade. If we want to be able to use the rubric and just select a few things in this table to provide the final score to the students for a specific assignment, then let me show you how that can be done. So this is one of the rubrics that I had set for a lab assignment previously. So while I was setting the assignment, these were the scores that I gave. And if I edit, you can see that I can use this rubric for assignment grading. And yeah, if I change the final score, so this comes up to be for 100 points. Sometimes if you want the score to be a specific number and you want to offer extra credit, you can set additional. For example, now if I add another criterion, maybe submitted early or something, and I give them 5 additional points, this criterion makes the total points for this assignment higher than the total allowable points. And if I update the rubric and leave it different, then the students can get the extra credit on that assignment. So leave different. Why isn't it saving? Yeah, it should save the assignment, and it didn't work. It might be just a glitch in the system. Let me try it again. This was for, okay, it's saved, but it just didn't show me that it's saved. So now if I use the speed grader to grade this assignment and I view the rubric, if looking at a student's assignment, now I can actually just use this table to set the score for the student. I've given this as a range here, but if you don't have a range, you can just select one of these things and it automatically assigns the score for the student based on the criteria. And these criteria are not very clearly defined here. I'm just saying partially correct or one incomplete or something like that. But you can actually give very detailed descriptions of what you think is a partially correct answer or how you want to assign partial credit. And it makes it very easy on the students to select, to plan their time to do the assignment. So let me show some score here. I just set some things. If I save it, it'll automatically appear in the grade over here. I've set this assignment to be a letter grade, so it appears as F. But if I do set it up as just the actual points, then the number would appear. So points, and we save it, then that should appear as 40 points, the one that I've selected. Yeah, so the number came up without having to do any additional steps, just selecting from the elements in the rubric. So this is one way to do rubrics in the traditional points system. If you want to do it for specifications grading, that's also quite simple with Canvas. All we have to do is come up with the specification grading rubric and use the same setup to do the rubrics. For example, this is what I have for specifications grading. For this assignment, I say that a high pass is if you get this much, a low pass in this assignment is if you get this much score, and a fail is if you do this. And setting up the rubric is exactly like what we do with a traditional rubric, except that every element is just 1 point. And one additional thing I do want to show is if you want letter grades to appear on your assignments rather than the number, like I had previously, I'd already moved one step forward. So the way we can set that up is choosing the letter grade here. And to be able to do that, you need a grading scheme for the course. To set a grading scheme, you can go to the settings for your course details. There should be an enable grading scheme for the course. This usually sets the grading scheme for the entire course, meaning the final score gets translated to the letter grade. But if you want to add a grading scheme, when you set the grading scheme, you can see an option to manage grading schemes. And over here, you can set any grading scheme that you want. And that's the one that will be used in the assignment or whatever else you want to use it for. With specifications grading, this becomes very easy to set letter grades for the students to see and know if they've passed the assignment with a high pass or a low pass, or if they need to revise the assignment, or if they just failed. So the other thing I did want to show is aligning outcomes to the rubrics. Outcomes are a great way to show the students that this is the learning outcome that they're achieving with an assignment. And the way we can set that up for the course is by going into outcomes and setting up the outcomes over here. For example, this is an outcome that tests whether the students have a grasp of algorithms and data structures. And there are ways to say whether or not the students meet expectation or exceed expectation and so on. There are many ways of calculating whether a student has achieved mastery. I think this will be a separate faculty conversation. So you can set up the rubrics as usual. Once the rubric is set up, you can add outcomes by finding an outcome. For example, if I want to add this outcome, I can select this outcome as part of the rubric. And the good thing is I can either use it for contributing to the final score in the assignment, or I can just use it to indicate whether or not the student has achieved the outcome. That way it doesn't mess with the final score, the number score, if you don't want that behavior in your rubric. But if you do want to use the outcomes in your course for the scoring, you can absolutely do that as well. So once you select that and import it into the rubric, it'll start appearing on the rubric. For example, I just do this. This will appear, and now this is an item that I said should be included in the scoring. So my total points also increased. Yeah, and then if I update the rubric, it'll tell me that the total number of points has also increased. And yeah, I can either change the final score or leave it different. That's up to you. Yeah, once that is done, when you have to grade the assignment in SpeedGrader, it appears in the rubric the same way as everything else. And you can select whether the student met expectations, exceeded expectations. Very similar to how we did for the other things. If we selected that the rubric doesn't contribute to the final score, it will look like this item here. It doesn't affect the final score. But if we wanted to affect the final score in the assignment, then it looks something like this. And we can save it and the score appears. For this also, I've set up a letter grade, so it automatically updates the letter grade. So that's all I wanted to showcase about the way I use rubrics in my courses. And it has been very beneficial to me for two reasons. One is the students don't ask me questions about what exactly they need to complete for a specific homework question, because they know very clearly based on the rubric that this is the expectation.